Welcome back to our dinosaur building series. We are now going to attach our head to our body. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, the body is going to have a, it's not completely symmetrical around. There's a flat spot that I like to call the stomach, and then here's the back side. Now, with this, I'm going to try and figure out where exactly kind of a center line is in this, and that's where I want to attach the back of my head so that my dinosaur is looking forward away from his backside, right? So I'm going to grab this piece of yarn that we left conveniently sticking out of the center of the bottom of his head. And I am going to stick it in the top big hole here that we made when we started our body. And I'm going to go straight away from the roundest part of my backside here. So I'm going to make sure I feel like it's kind of right here. So I'm going to go ahead and go like this and go straight away from that. Now when I put my head on, I want to make sure that the back of my head lines up with the back of my dinosaur, and then the front should be looking forward. Okay, make sense? All right, now I'm going to take his head here and I'm going to go up under his chin, right about in this area, because if you look at how it's going to sit on here, that is going to line up right about there. Does that make sense? So I'm going to take this, line up the back of his head where I want it to go, and then I'm going to stick my needle right under his chin here. Sorry, Mr. Dinosaur. There. And if I'm a little off left and right, I can adjust it as I go, but now I'm going to come back out behind that so that when I pull this down in tight, it will sink down onto his dinosaur neck here. All right, good so far. Now I'm going to hold these two things in place. Sorry, adjust my angle here. I'm going to hold these two things in place and go back and forth between his head and his neck and just make sure it's good and solid on there. If it wiggles back and forth a little bit, that's okay. I don't care. I just want to make sure it doesn't fall off. Right? I don't want to traumatize a poor little kid by ripping a dinosaur's head off while he's playing with it. So we're just going to keep going back and forth until we get this guy good and solid on here. I feel like that's a good spot there. And I'm also going to go left and right and make sure I get him left and right in here pretty solid too. And I'm checking my orientation as I'm doing this so that I'm making sure I'm not pulling forward or backward too far. So there, it's starting to stick on a little more solid. There we go. I don't know, what do you guys think? I think it's looking pretty cute. When I stick my needle in, I'm trying not to go through the same spot all the time. I'm trying to make sure I grab it in different spaces so that he's got a good solid foundation. I'm also pulling pretty tight. I want to make sure he's connected really well. And I think this might be my last stitch here. All right, I like it. Yeah. He does seem to be looking a little off to the side, but I can turn him and fix that. Okay, so now I am going to knot this up under his neck here. So I'm going to tip his head a little bit. I'm going to knot it here, potentially. And then once I'm done knotting it, I am just going to pull put my needle through his body and out probably where his arm is, or somewhere, either his arm, or if I know I'm going to put a spike on his back, where his spike is, but I'm going to put it down where I think his arm's going to be, so that I can connect this to his arm yarn when I get there. Now this knot will not be visible because I'm going to pull it through his body. Right, so now I'm going to go straight down here, and I'm just going to say, okay, so I feel like his arm is going to come out right around in here, and I can always adjust this later, but I'm going to pull that through. And there we go. Now his head is attached. My knot is buried. It's not going anywhere. Good, good. Now I'm going to put some eyes on him. Like I mentioned in the intro video, I like seeing the face on the dinosaur as I'm working on it. It's just a personality thing for me. Now, if you're really, really OCD, you could go around here and figure out where you've done the increases and where's a good spot to put his eyes, but I am just going to visually decide I want an eye right there, for example. So I'm going to grab my black yarn, and you can use any color you want for this, but I'm going black. All right, so hang on. All right, so for example, I think I want his first eye there. That looks about right. Now when I do this, I'm going to pull it up, and I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail there. And I'm going to just continue to go in circles. A few times. And I'll probably do this at least 4 times so that he has a good solid eye. I don't want splits in the eye. Yeah, I think 4 will do it. Now I'm going to come out the other side of his head where I want his other eye to be. And I feel like that's going to be right here, potentially. Yeah, I think that's about right. All right, so if that eye is there, this one's going to be like right here. And if you decide you don't like where you've put the eyes, you can always move them. I'm going to do the same thing I did on the last side. I'm just going to continue to go back and forth. I want to make sure he has a good solid eye. All right, and there are his 2 eyes. What do you think? Now I'm going to take these tails. I'm going to start with this one here, my first tail. And these are really unlikely to come out because it's now been wrapped around quite a few times. My yarn keeps sweating. So I'm going to take this tail and tuck it under his eye and then just shove it into his head. I know, that sounds sad, but that's what I'm going to do. Like that. And then what I'll do is I will pull this really tightly and cut it, but I don't want to do that until I move this yarn out of the way because I don't want to accidentally cut that. Then I'm going to do the same thing with this yarn. I'm going to take it and run it under. Going to run it under here and go down into his head. Now, if I know I'm going to put a mouth or something like that on the front, I can just run this out the front of his nose here. but if I'm not sure, I can go ahead and just run it out the front there and then decide later. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to cut this guy off. Now when I cut it off, I'm going to pull it really tight, cut it, and then when I let go, it will suck back into his head. That was dramatic. All right, now this will suck back into his head, and if you find that it doesn't suck back into his head, take your little yarn needle and just run it back and forth like this a little bit, and it will catch that and pull it in. But there you have it. Now we have 2 eyes on our dinosaur. And currently a big, long, whatever this is. But like I said, now you can decide if you want a mouth or not. If you don't, again, we will just knot this, and I can take it down into his neck and knot it. I could run it out where his other arm is and knot it there, but that'll basically get it out of the way into the body and keep it from coming undone up here. All right, so now we have a head and 2 eyes. I am not going to put a mouth on this guy, so I'm going to go ahead and run it through his body like I told you. So I'm going to take this. He's kind of nose heavy. He keeps wanting to flip over on his nose. I'm going to put it back in that same hole that I came out in. I'm going to run down his neck. Get him out where this arm is. Here. I could pull that through. And there we go. So now when I put this arm on, I will bury these 2 in his arm. I will probably also knot them when we get there. Mr. Dinosaur now has a couple eyes. He's got his head attached to his body. Now we need some arms and legs and spikes. Join me in the next video where we will make that happen. Bye, everyone.